but this is basically a graph to show you when it's best to reject and accept potential mates. So on the x-axis, I have 1 to n, and n is the number of people you've met in your entire life, ranked by fitness conferral, which basically means how attracted you are to them. So 1 is like the most attractive person, and then n is like the least attractive out of every single person you've ever encountered in your entire life, right? So obviously, to make a point, I have number 1 as Yuhyun, number 2 as Ryujin, and number 3 as Binny. So these 3 are the most attractive, okay? And then I have ... So this is just like the ranking of people. So like after number 3, maybe number 4 would be like, I don't know, like Yeonwoo, and the number 5 is like Zuyu or something. And maybe like number 6 is like my ex, I don't know. Like just like, you can make your own graph, but basically this is ranked from the most attractive to the least attractive. Okay, so this is like the 100th person I date hypothetically in my like bias list or whatever. Okay, and then on the y-axis is the maximum lifetime fitness, which basically means like how much success I have from an evolutionary standpoint, which basically means like how many healthy, successful kids am I gonna have? Okay, so we're assuming that the more attracted you are to your number 1, the higher ranked people, the more fitness you get, right? So I'm assuming that number 1 has like the best genes for me when we mix, and then number 100 is like not that good. Okay, so based on this, if I only, okay, so think of it like this: if I can only mate with Yuhyun, like if I only accept Yuhyun, so if my switch point is over here and I have a line like this, and I reject Ryujin and Binny and everyone else, then I would have a very low maximum lifetime fitness. Now you would think that I would have a high maximum lifetime fitness, but I don't, because if I only accept Yuhyun and I reject everyone else, then it would be really bad for me, because if Yuhyun rejects me, then that means I get 0. That means I get nothing. Okay, so that's a really bad thing. So like, if I all in on Yuhyun and I don't get Yuhyun, then I just get a maximum lifetime fitness of 0, which is really bad. And then, even assuming I do get Yuhyun, like what's the chance that I ever meet her? So this takes into account like all the probability. Whereas if I, like maybe, okay, let's say I don't only accept Yuhyun, let's say I accept Yuhyun and Ryujin and Binny and like everyone else too, like up until like the 43rd person. So the 43rd person in my 1 to n is like the 43rd most attractive person to me that I've ever met. Okay, so this would create the highest overall lifetime fitness for me, because this means that I accept everyone over here, which means even if Yuhyun rejects me, I can have Ryujin or Binny, and even if they reject me, maybe I can get like number 20 or number 30 or like number 41, and then I would have at least some fitness, or I would have some children, all right? I would have some good, successful children, which is why my maximum lifetime fitness would be best if I accepted everyone to the left of 40 something, right? According to this. But let's say I'm less picky. Let's say suddenly I'm less picky and I'm over here and I accept everyone up until 90, right? So the 90th most attractive person in my life, I accept that person. But this actually decreases your fitness. Why? You'd think that if I accept more people, that just means I have more success and more kids, right? But it doesn't, because there's an opportunity cost, because if I'm having a kid with this person, that means I'm not having a kid with this person, which means my overall fitness is going to drop, because having a kid with this person would be less genetically fit than having a kid with this person. Does that make sense? Kinda? Right, so that's why it's best if my switch point is over here. Now, if my switch point is over here, and I only accept like up to number 10, that's still pretty bad, because I'm like, maybe everyone from 1 to 10 would reject me, or maybe I never even meet them. So that would be bad. And I'd be wasting my time trying to find those 10 people. Okay, so this is why this is the optimum. The switch point is basically the optimum point for you to accept and reject people. So everyone to the left of 43, I accept. Everyone to the right of 43, I reject. Okay, and some people are saying, talking about like looks and personality, this takes into account looks and personality and everything else. So I'm not only attracted to looks, I'm also attracted to personality, right? So that means this takes into account personality as well. Okay, so maybe number 50 is like the same as good looking as number 70, but number 50 has a way better personality. Okay, so this takes into account personality, not just looks. Okay, so it's overall attractiveness. Okay, so again, maximum lifetime fitness is basically the success of my genetic success, or basically like how many healthy children, how well I can raise my children to be healthy, and how many children I have. So things like that, basically. So if I have more children, that's good. And if I have one child, but he's like really healthy, that's better than having 10 kids who are all really unhealthy. Doesn't that make sense? Some people are saying start over, but it's kind of hard to start over. So, but basically, the switch point means that there's an optimal point at which there's an optimal pickiness that I should have. How do you make this thing? How do you put them in order? 1 to n is the people you've met in your entire life, ranked by fitness conferral, which basically means ranked by attractiveness. So again, for me, Yushan is the most attractive person, which means she's number 1. Okay? And okay, what if none of the partners want kids? Okay, well, we have to assume certain things. Like we have to assume that they want kids and that they're fertile. And we can't assume that they don't want to have kids or that they can't have kids. Okay? If they do, then just get rid of them on this chart. Okay? So I think, yeah, so yes, it is subjective. It's not objective. This is subjective. So everyone's is going to be different. So maybe for me, I would reject everyone who's less attractive than the 43rd most attractive person. But then maybe for some people, they're so picky that they only accept the top 10, which would be actually okay if they're like imagine if you're like BTS, if you're like Jungkook or something, and your switch point is over here and you're like this picky, you're probably fine, because like, who's gonna reject you? You're Jungkook. But if you're like some random hobo, your switch point is probably gonna be way on this side, because like, you don't have any options. So if you don't have any options, then you might as well settle for something lower than your optimal point. Doesn't that make sense? So this is just an arbitrary point. I'm not saying that there are 43 people I would accept and everyone else I would reject. I'm just saying that this is just like an example. So hopefully that makes sense. So yeah, so based on this, the situation changes based on certain things, right? So I have a list of things that I have over here. You guys can also ask questions. Imagine if you're a really attractive girl and you get kidnapped. Okay, so you're a really attractive girl, and then one day you're walking along the street and some dude just comes out of a van and pulls you into the car and takes you to his like private island where you can't escape and there's no signal and you can't do anything except talk to that guy, right? Suddenly everyone in your life is just one person. Now, if there's only one option for you, then your switch point is automatically going to move to the left. because you're not going to be able to choose anyone else other than that one person. And some people would say like, oh, I would never love the person who kidnapped me, right? But there's actually a thing that happens called Stockholm syndrome, which is when the victim falls in love with like the kidnapper. And this actually happens. Like you can look it up on Google. I guarantee this actually happens in real life. And this happens because from an evolutionary standpoint, mating with your kidnapper is better than not mating at all. And it's not conscious. It's not like people are thinking about this, but this is how we've evolved to basically pass down our genes, right? So Stockholm syndrome is a real thing, and that's why like I hope none of you guys ever get kidnapped, because you might just end up falling in love with your kidnapper, and then your switch point would be all the way over here, which is not good, right? Can I go over how if I'm less picky, it would go lower? Yeah, so this switch point is basically like a pickiness line. So if I go to the right, that means I'm less picky. If I go to the left, that means I'm more picky. So if I go to the right and I'm at 90, that means I reject everyone who's after 90, but I accept everyone who's above 90. Makes sense? Yeah, in a little bit. But another thing, did you guys know that based on many, many years of research, girls are pickier than guys? And it's not even like, you don't even need research for this. Like, I'm pretty sure everyone understands that girls are pickier than guys. So let's say, okay, I'm a guy and my switch point is over here. If I were a girl, it's likely that my switch point would be like over here. Why? Because if you're a girl, it affects your maximum lifetime fitness in a lot of ways. One way it affects you is that girls can get pregnant. So girls have to invest a lot more to have the kid. So they're generally going to be pickier, because if a girl is accepting someone as a mate, then that means that that girl has to be like more sure. Whereas if a guy says yes, like the guy can get the girl pregnant, and then technically the guy doesn't really have to stay with the girl, right? But the girl is always stuck with the baby no matter what. So that's why girls have evolved to be pickier. So if I were a girl, my switch point might be like that, right? Because I want the highest quality for my kid, and even if I want to, because I'm investing more than the guy is, right? So if you're a really attractive person, it's likely that your switch point's going to be farther to the left, because you're more certain that like the people who you're most attracted to will say yes to you. Whereas if you're unattractive, your switch point's probably going to be over there. What else? Monogamy versus polygamy. Yeah, okay, so also note that a lot of animals, they are not monogamous, which means they have more than one mate. So this makes even more sense in that case, because when you're monogamous, like if I'm monogamous, then as soon as I get like number 40, then I say no to everyone else, right? So I say no to everyone else, including Yuhyun. So let's say I date the 40th most attractive person to me, and then like we get married, right? And then Yuhyun suddenly like, I like you, wanna like marry me and have kids with me? And then I would be like, no, right? Because I'm monogamous. But that's actually not how most animals work. And even like humans sometimes don't work like that. So like in reality, for a lot of animals, if the number one person comes to you and like asks and like says, I want your kids, then you'd basically have an affair with that number one person. And then like you would have an affair with all these people so that you could increase your maximum lifetime fitness, right? And then you'd still reject these people because these people are not worth their time. Because if all these people ask you to have kids with them, then that means all these people would be like a waste of time for you, because you can spend all your time having kids with these people, right? Yeah, so this is just like a certain way to think about mating behavior, not just in humans but in animals in general. The question why have kids is kind of weird, because like even if you don't want kids, okay, from an evolutionary standpoint, if you don't want kids or you don't have kids, you basically become irrelevant because your genes don't get passed on to the next generation, which means that your kids, okay, since you don't have kids, there won't be people who don't want kids in the futures, right? So humans evolved toward wanting kids because people who don't want kids won't have kids. So if you have like in a population of 10 people don't want kids and 100 people do, those 10 people will die out because they won't have kids. And then they won't have the genes that make them not want kids. Does age affect any of this? Well, obviously, as you age, you're probably going to have to get less picky because you're going to be less attractive as you age, which means your switch point's going to have to be lower, or else you're not, because people on the top are not going to accept you as much. Right. All right. So it's better to be pickier. It's better to be at the exact switch point. Now, obviously, no one knows what their exact switch point is, but this is why it's like a thing to think about, like how picky should I be? So obviously, don't be like super picky, but also don't be like super not picky. Could I possibly have an interval between two switch points? Yeah, like, okay, when I was in a sophomore year of college, I got a really bad haircut, right? So my hair was really short, and then like, okay, like my switch point's over here, right? And like this is this assume this is okay for now because assume that like maybe some people over here would accept me. But when I got that haircut, my attractiveness dropped so much that my switch point should have been like over here. But it didn't because I was still picky. So because I was over here, that year I just like completely failed the game. Like I didn't talk to any girls at all. But then as I got my hair back, it got better again, obviously.